All right, now guys, we're going to talk about section 6.2, where that is covering how income and prices are going to be changing your choice. So here we have our budget constraint. Okay, and so on this one, we're talking about how many concert tickets you can buy and how many overnight stays you can do. So if you had a limited budget and you're trying to make a plan of like, hey, we have this many concert tickets, how many nights can we stay? How many friends can we bring? Things like that. What's the most amount we can do? So we're going to figure out how much does your choice change because of a change in income here. So let's say that your optimal choice was point M, meaning you would buy 3 overnight stays and you have 8 concert tickets. So given your income, right, you would buy 3 movies or 3 overnight stays and 8 concert tickets. Now, this was done using your marginal analysis, right? The margin utility divided by price, and we found that this was the best choice. Okay, we did not do this, but let's just say that somebody else did, and they found 3 stays and 8 tickets to be the best for them. Now, because there's an increase in income, right? So what do we normally do, right? If you had more income, could you buy more stuff? Yes. And if you're saying we don't know if it's an inferior good, good job. But let's just say these are normal goods, all right, to where if you have more income, you're going to buy more. So we can see they will buy more, right? Because look at the budget constraint. It goes out. But how much more, right? How many more stays are we doing? How many more tickets are we buying? That is going to change, right? Because we can buy more. So looking at the different options here, if we were to choose N, so we have more money, so we could choose N, what would happen there? What would happen to tickets? You could buy more tickets. What would happen to overnight stays? You could buy more, right? So tickets would increase and overnight stays would increase because now we have 5 overnight stays and 20 concert tickets. That's if you chose N. All right. So what are we saying here about point N? Is that you're buying more, right? Because you have more money, you're buying more of both. And that's normal, right? Because your income going up, you are buying more, so that's normal. But what if we chose point P? Point P is interesting, right? Because now, what happened to the overnight stays? The overnight stays at point P is at 2. So overnight stays actually go down. Oh, I'm sorry, I kind of flipped these around here. Tickets are 20, overnight stays are 5. Okay, so point P, overnight, right? You're only doing 2. And tickets, you're buying 32. So if we chose point P, all right, we have an increase in income. So tickets, we're buying more, so that's normal, all right? But what about overnight stays? Well, we're going to find out that overnight stays, right, we're buying less, so that's going to be inferior, all right? And this is going to be normal, right? If you're wondering why is that inferior, remember, more income and you buy less of it, that's an inferior good, all right? So that's what's interesting about point P, is that yes, you do have more money, but based off of your choice of M and where you want to go with P, you are choosing less overnight stays. So those are inferior. Now what about point Q? Let's say you were at M, and then you have an increase in income, so now you're at Q. You're now choosing 9 overnight stays and 4 tickets. So looking at this one, all right, what is the normal good? Normal meaning you have more money, you buy more. So which one are you buying more of? You're buying more overnight stays. So overnight, all right, you're buying more, you're now buying 9, so that is normal because you were buying 3 but now you're buying 9. Now what about tickets? Okay, you were buying 8, and now you're buying 4. So tickets go down, right? Because now you're buying 4. So this means it's an inferior good, meaning your income goes up and your quantity is going down. So you're trying to figure out, based off of this, what's the point of this? Well, here's the deal. You have to look at your optimal choice. Right? You always have to do the marginal analysis where you do the margin utility divided by price and figure out what is better for you. All right? And when you do that and you find out you're at P or N or Q, you'll figure out if it's a normal good or an inferior good. Okay? So based off of this graph here, you can look at the change before and the change after, and you can figure out if it's an inferior good or not. And that's all because of a change in income. Okay? So what about price? Because if price changes, right, like if baseball bats are more expensive, what do we know about the law of demand? If the price goes higher, you have to buy less, right? So that's what's going to happen here. Now, you're going to buy less baseball bats, but did the price of cameras change? No, right? So we're going to keep cameras the same because you could buy the same amount of cameras. But baseball bats are more expensive, so you have to buy less of those. So we're going to shift the budget constraint inward, okay? Because now you have to buy less baseball bats because they're more expensive. So let's say the optimal choice was at M, all right? And then after shifting in the budget constraint, you now have different combinations that you could choose, right? So all of these are on your budget constraint, H, J, K, and L. So you could afford all of these options here, all right? So what is going to happen is you need to pick the one that's better for you. If you pick H, what is H telling you? Well, we were at M, okay, but now we're choosing H. What's the difference between H and M? Okay, well, H is up here. So what happened to cameras? We're buying more cameras. All right, because look at where we were. We were here, and now we're here. We're buying more cameras, and we're buying less baseball bats. Okay, what about point K? K is pretty interesting. Okay, because here's that K, right? So here's the amount of cameras we're doing, and here's the amount of baseball bats we're doing. So what changed here? Well, cameras, we were here and now we're here, so that's going down. And then we have the same amount of baseball bats. So that's interesting. So cameras go down and the bats stay the same. So this is interesting, right? Because it's like you really get a lot of utility out of that many baseball bats. So it's like, let's say you had 3 kids, right? And you needed 3 baseball bats. You need 3 baseball bats and they change the price on you. You're like, hey, I got to cut back on the cameras because I need these 3 baseball bats. So that's an example there, right? It's like because the baseball bats are more expensive, you're going to have to make a choice somewhere else, right? And it really depends on that margin utility divided by price. It's going to change the amount that you're buying, right? But if it's like point K, right, if you want to do the same amount of baseball bats, you're going to have to do less cameras, all right? And now what about point L? Point L, right, that's really interesting because not only did the price of bats go up, but you're actually buying more bats at point L. For whatever reason, right, that is a possible combination that you could do, all right? So at this one, you're doing less cameras, but you're doing more bats. So that's probably the most interesting one if you were to choose point L. Okay? So that's how a change in price is going to change your budget constraint. Okay, and then all you're going to do is look at before and after. You're going to figure out, are you buying more or less of something? So looking at H, right, we can see we're buying more cameras, less bats. Point K, we're buying less cameras, same amount of bats. Point L, we're buying more bats, less cameras. Point J, if you wanted to do it, right, what is happening there? Well, point J is less than M for cameras and bats. All right, so that's what's happening when a change in price happens. Okay, so what are we doing here? We had two situations going on. We had a change in income, where when we had a change in income, it looked like this. Okay, change in income is where you are either going to be having X and Y, and here's your budget constraint, and then you're going to be buying more of each. Okay, so that's income, or you have income going down, right? So this is a change in income. And then here is a change in price. So let's say the price of Y goes up. You have to buy less Y because it's more expensive. So we're going to keep the same amount of X and shift the Y in. But let's say we have the price of Y going down. So now you can buy more stuff. So here's your budget constraint. X did not change, but price of Y goes down, so you can buy more. So I'm going to shift it out. Okay. And if the price of X goes up, that would mean that you have to buy less X. And if the price of Y changes, then that's going to change. Price of X changes by going down. That means you're going to be buying more X. So we're going to shift that up. Okay. So these are a change in price, where we're having one side changing. A change in income is where we're actually moving the budget constraint, both sides. So we did all of that to basically show you that when there's a change in prices or a change in income, right, that is going to affect your choice. And then there's two reasons why this is going to change your choice. And one of them is the substitution effect. So we already talked about substitutes, where it's like, because price of Coke is more expensive, you're going to buy more Pepsi. So the price of substitutes. We already talked about how that changes. And that's kind of what's happening here, right? Because price of bats are more expensive, how does that change your demand for cameras? So the substitution effect, right? Where you are now consuming less of one good and buying another because it's cheaper, right? So the substitution effect still plays a role here. And we can see that whenever the price of bats goes up and we buy more cameras, right? That's the substitution effect. Now the income effect is where higher prices have actually reduced your buying power, so you buy less. So even though your income did not change on the prices, but you still are buying less of something, that's the income effect, right? The prices have changed, so your buying power has changed. So both of these effects are happening simultaneously. We just need to figure out which one's stronger, okay? And how we do that is we're going to go back to this example, okay? If the price increases, all right, and you are buying less bats and more cameras, okay? So let's go back with what's happening here, okay? Because the price of bats are more expensive, right? You're buying more cameras, so you are substituting here. So the substitution effect is stronger than the income effect. And if you're wondering, why is the substitution effect stronger than the income effect? Well, the income effect would say, because everything is more expensive, it's like your income's going down. So income down, cameras and bats go down, right? So that's the thinking here, is that because prices go up, it is like your income going down, and if your income goes down, your demand goes down. So we would have cameras go down and bats go down. Okay. But if we are buying less bats and more cameras, right, that's the substitution effect. Okay. Substitution effects are stronger than the income effect. Now, if we are buying less bats and less cameras, right, then that's going to be where the income effect is stronger than the substitution effect. Okay, because on your income, you're buying less and less of the because of your income. That means your income effect is stronger than your substitution effect. So that's how that one goes. So if you picked H, okay, that would show you that you're having more cameras, less bats. So substitution effect is stronger. If you pick something like J, where you have less of both, then that would be the income effect is stronger. Okay. If you had something like L, right, this would be the substitution effect again, in a weird direction, but still, right? It's like you're having less of cameras and more bats, right? So it's like, you're having some sort of weird combination going on here. Actually, you could have maybe the income effect is stronger in that because bats are more expensive, you could be treating it like an inferior good, right, by buying more. So like I said, L's a weird one in terms of substitution income effect. But that's the idea, all right? It's because the price of bats change, that changes how much you buy of cameras. So if the price goes up and you buy more cameras, substitution effect. If you're buying less of both, that's the income effect. All right. So now if we talked about how this is going to change the demand curve, all right, as we see with a change in price, we know that this is changing your quantity that you're buying, right? Law of demand. Higher prices, lower quantity. Okay? And sure enough, we do see this on the demand curve. Because if I were to look at my budget constraint, right? I was trying to maximize my utility off of the budget constraint. We are able to build the demand curve. Okay, as you can see here, this is the budget constraint. Okay, so we have all the combinations that we have, right? And then we have point M0, M1, M2, and M3. All of these are the optimal choice, but what is changing is the price. So the price of the house is increasing. So the price of the house is increasing, so we're going to shift it inwards. Okay? And so as you can see here, our optimal choice is changing, and you're buying more of everything else and less of housing. And if we were to put this on a graph here, you would see that price is going up and quantity is going down. So that's how we get the law of demand. Because of your budget constraint where you're buying less of something because of a higher price, that's how we get the demand curve. Okay, so as point M changes, the points of E also change. All right. So if that was confusing, the main thing I really want you to understand is that when you change your income, this does change your budget constraint. So you will be buying more of something or less of something because of your budget, right? And then if you are changing the price of something, this will shift, right, one side of the budget constraint. Now, if you're buying more or less of something, that's going to be the substitution effect or the income effect. Okay, so when we were talking about the tickets over here, right? If we chose P, okay, then that would mean that we have an inferior good here, right? Because of the income when it goes up, but you buy less of something, so it's an inferior good. So the income effect would be stronger here. And then we have normal goods, right? So basically we have to figure out what is the change going on to figure out the substitution effect or the income effect. All right, so in the next section we'll talk about behavioral economics. That's where it'll get pretty interesting. Okay, I'll see you there.